a few fun, but also maybe depressing facts. The EU generates more startups per year than the US, and venture returns in Europe run about 6% higher. But 30% of our winners head off west. I guess no great surprise. So I'd like to pose this question here to you, wonderful gents. Can Europe build a $1 trillion company?
I think, as you said, we're pretty close with ASML, 720, 750 billion valuation. So not far off the trillion, and it seems plausible that it will get there. I think the challenge we have is pretty far down to the next one. Spotify, Revolut, formidable companies, but they probably need to 10x from where they are to get to $1 trillion. It's not to say they can't, but there's some ways to go. So we just don't have the density of the ecosystem. Also, ASML is it's not a young company, and it was a spin out, right? It's kind of full of technology and other businesses. So it's very different from the Googles and the Anthropics of this world that sort of grew up and became very big companies very quickly. This has taken time. This is more sort of a traditional European industrial approach, and we just don't have that ecosystem yet at that level. Now, you are absolutely right. We are seeing a lot of great things at the grassroots level. We're seeing great new companies being created. We're seeing more repeat founders. I'd say the quality of businesses that are being built in Europe is much higher than it was 15 years ago.
I love seeing the recycling as well. That's the thing that always brings me joy is how the talent and the capital is recycling. So yeah, great.
And one thing I think that's really positive there is just the energy we're seeing in London right now. It's in many ways the powerhouse that keeps the UK relevant in this game. And there was a bit of a wobble after Brexit, right, with some of those new barriers and things. But I'd say that the city is firmly back now. And what we're seeing, especially in AI, is just tremendous. So I'm optimistic from that perspective. But I'm sure, Joe, you probably have a much wider lens on where victory lands and whether we can get it done.
Well, I don't even know if it's the right question. Can we build a $1 trillion company? But we can and we will. Maybe let's remember, we talk about $1 trillion companies like they're just normal and they're all everywhere around us. But it's only 8 years ago that the first publicly listed $1 trillion company arose, right? Apple reached $1 trillion in summer of 2018. So this is a fairly new thing. And I remember in the years before that, how crazy it seemed that there would be any company at $1 trillion. So we live in a very brief moment, but if you put a little history on it, things are impossible until they become true. So I think that way about the European ecosystem. One of the great things about technology and innovation is that things that look right now impossible to happen or never will happen, but they do happen, and they happen quicker than we seem to think they will. Is there anything in our portfolio that can go that way? I don't know. We focus on the early stages. So when I think back to the early stages of Amazon, it was a bookshop. I remember my boss at the time saying, "Hey, there's a new way you can buy books online."
Yeah.
There was no route.
Who would have thought?
Route from that to they're selling their own chips now. Really? You're a book, you make your own chip. Okay, right? And Google was search. There were 15 other search engines when Google came out. So can you see that getting to $1 trillion? You absolutely cannot see what that would become and how it would pivot. So I think in the same way, here's the kind of fun thing that I always think. Probably the next $1 trillion European company is already operational and running. Yeah. And they're growing. They're there. And I wish I knew which ones they were, because I would put all my money on
let's go for
right
that
now.
Yeah.
But
I'd be following you.
That's the diversity game, right? We're not sure which one. But I had a really fun conversation last week. A US investor was visiting, and they've invested in a broad portfolio as well. And we were talking about ICEYE becoming Europe's newest decacorn. It's in our portfolio. We're super happy about it. They spoke at our annual meeting this year. Beautiful. And he said to me, I'm invested in the US competitor, and I have to give it to you. The best company in the world for what they're doing is ICEYE, Polish tech out of Finland. And that makes me feel great. It's not that we're building something which works locally or whatever. If you want that particular service, which a lot of governments do and so on, they're the best in the world. And that, I think, is what drives ultimately these big outcomes. So yeah, I end up being, not surprisingly, on your optimist side of the table, Mads. And
we have to, but that's the game we're in, right?
That's why we're in this business.
We should go and make sandwiches if we're not optimists, that's for sure. And
Yeah.
it does make me smile when you're talking about which businesses are going to become, because you look at Allbirds moving from selling shoes to selling compute and becoming smart birds. I forgot what they're called now, but I think there's going to be some weird and wonderful pivots, I'm sure, in this space.